Hey y'all, Data Guy here. And so today, what I have for you is kind of a follow-up video to the three different videos I've made about, hey, what is a data engineer? What is an analytics engineer? What is a data scientist? And today I wanted to kind of summarize it all and give you a comparison between the three so that you can figure out, hey, now that I know what these three roles are, which one is the right one for me? And so I'll give you kind of a brief introduction to each of the roles, what their responsibilities are, what their tasks are, the kind of tools they use, and then also look at compensation for each of these because we're not all, or at least I'm not in it for free. I'm in it to make some cash, so got to figure out, hey, if you're trying to live a certain lifestyle at a certain price point, which role is going to get you there. And so I won't go too deep into kind of what each of them does. If you're looking to go really deep on like the day to day of what each of these roles looks like, definitely go check out their respective videos, and I'll put those links in the description. But without further ado, let's get into it. And so all of these three roles in the past kind of I would say 2 decades have just become increasingly relevant for really any enterprise. And so what I want to look at here are hey, what do each of these people do, and then which one sounds most interesting for you, obviously. And so at the start, I'm going to break this down, look at responsibilities for each. So first, I want to look at hey, what are our data analyst responsibilities look like? So at kind of a high level, their primary role is really just extracting insights from data to aid business decisions. Providing reporting mechanisms, interpreting raw data to people that aren't trained, like executives, to actually read and develop their own insights from data. They need the insights, and they can kind of decide what to do with them. And so to accomplish this, they're going to be collecting data from many different sources. They're going to be, figuring out ways to clean and pre-process the data before they can actually generate insights from it, manage databases, maybe not, actually filling the databases, but designing the structure of a database so that it's more efficient for analytics queries. Then obviously once they have that clean data, analyzing and interpreting it, generating those interpretants into kind of reports, preparing reports, and then at a more macro level, kind of understanding data trends, patterns over time as they're analyzing all this data, and figuring out how to constantly improve and develop better analysis. And the main skills that, or main tools that they're going to be using to accomplish this are things like SQL, Python, R for manipulating the data, then tools like Tableau or Power BI for actually visualizing it. And if you're at a really old school company, then you might also be using some Excel. So that's kind of what the responsibilities of a data analyst are. But now I want to go into, hey, what are the responsibilities of a data engineer? So now the data engineer is kind of a step back from the data analyst in terms of, where the data, I guess a step back in terms of the data flow. So the data analyst is analyzing the data, but they're typically not actually processing it or ingesting it from sources. That's where the data engineer comes in. And the data engineer's primary role, especially as a big data engineer, is to design, construct, install, and then maintain large scale processing systems and other infrastructure. So they are building, maintaining data pipelines that are extracting data, making sure that your data architecture is able to support and your business requirements and also be reliable, making sure you have a infrastructure that isn't going to go down every once a day, optimizing database queries, making sure your data is of the highest possible quality, and working with all the big data technologies that are in the modern data stack to kind of automate and streamline a lot of these processes so that they can become repeatable, not something that a big data engineer needs to worry about, so they can keep growing and adding new data sources, and developing new pieces of infrastructure. So it doesn't just end as, hey, I've reached an endpoint of I have my data architecture. That architecture is always going to be evolving, always going to be changing. And so some of the tools you might be using are obviously SQL and Python again, but you also might be using something like Airflow, something like Spark, or managed Spark environment with something like Databricks. You're going to be using big databases like Snowflake, MySQL, Postgres. You're going to be familiar with kind of all the big cloud technologies as well, because that's how you're going to be extracting and manipulating your data. So while they're not actually generating insights from these data, they're just in charge of getting it. They don't care, or they're not tasked with actually, generating anything out of that data. That's the data analyst job. The next role I'm going to talk about is kind of a merge of the two, where they are maintaining all of this and also generating insights. So that is the analytics engineer. So let's go look at that roles responsibilities next. So the analytics engineer is almost a meld between the two. It sits between the data analyst and the data engineer. And they're really bridging that gap between data engineering, where they know how to get the data, they know how to process it at a large scale, but they're not really good at generating insights. And the inverse on the data analyst side, where they can generate insights, but they don't have these skills to work with big data. And so the analytics engineer is tasked with transforming data into a usable format for analysts. Because they have the eye on what an analyst would be looking at, they know how to get data in a format that's easily consumable by a data science team. And so they're able to create, maintain data models, ensure data quality, coach analyst data scientists on how to best work with them, and how to implement some of the SLDC best practices like CI/CD within the data science team, and also being able to, on the other side, collaborate with data engineers and infrastructure projects, help them explain, hey, these data analysts need this type of data, and interpret it into a language that data engineers can understand. And so for this role, you're going to be kind of a mix between the two. You're going to need to know some of those front-end analytics reporting tools, some SQL, some Python, um, probably some knowledge around, how big data, the different cloud technologies in the modern data stack, and DBT, I would also guess definitely going to be a big one for you. So now that we've talked about all three of these, why don't we take a look at compensation before we make our final kind of little comparison. So here we have a graphic I found of different salaries for different roles on average in 2019. So not the most relevant data, but not super out of date, at least for these comparison purposes. And it's just kind of the best graphic, I think, for comparing all across these different sectors. So you can see there at the top, data analyst, you're looking at an average salary of around 67K, which is about what I have seen, looking for, kind of for entry level position around 70K. With a bonus, you're going to have, around 75. With the high end of those salaries being 96 to 100,000 a year. And you can push above that if you're a senior level, director of data analytics, something like that. But generally, you're kind of capped below, I would say, around 150. Then for a data engineer, your entry level is a bit higher. So you're looking at so if you look at the BI engineer, that's just another term for, business intelligence engineer, which is an analytics engineer. You can see that by the focus being analytics here. Your average salary is going to be around 105, 110,000 base, probably some bonus for hitting any kind of metrics, and you'll get around 120, 130,000 mid-range your career. And then an entry level one is going to be earning around 70 to 90. But at the senior level, you can start to get up to 132K, and then plus bonus, that's going to be looking like 150, 160. And then I would say for a lot of startups, especially nowadays, you can probably push that up to 200, 250 in terms of total compensation. Now, for a analytics engineer now, sorry, I don't know if I was calling it analytics engineer, but for a data engineer now, sorry, my bad, for a data engineer, we have the average salary is kind of a smidgen higher than the analytics engineer. So with the data engineer, you're looking at an average salary for someone middle of their career around 120,000, higher end salary of around 160, and that's going to jack up to, there's some data engineers at Airbnb that are making like millions of dollars. So you can be up in the the high mid 100,000s. So I would say 300 to 400,000 here. This is probably a little low for what is in actuality in the market right now. Obviously, you need to be there for a while. When you're at senior level, you can really start raking it in. But I would say at kind of a mid level of your career, you're probably going to be making around $200,000, adjusting for crazy inflation since 2019, right? And so kind of just some other considerations that I wanted to make were just, hey, what is the place of each of these roles within the organization? And so pulling up just kind of a basic graphic here that has a lot of weird misspelling I've just noticed. But to talk about, hey, who are you going to be working with most of the time in each of these three roles? Because that's also important. What does your day-to-day look like? Does it fit your personality? And so data analysts, you're typically talking to business people like managers, executives, providing them insights and recommendations on what kind of decisions they should pursue. And so you're not typically getting super deep in the weeds technically in the back end. Obviously, you're communicating with data engineers, you're communicating with people on the back end or the IT team, but they're not who your direct reports that you're reporting to, business managers and decision makers. Data engineer is often very much embedded in the IT organization. They're collaborating with software engineers, cloud architects to figure out how to plug into their backend to pull data out, and then they're also serving data to the data analysts or to the data scientists. But it was really I'm gonna call imagine the data scientist is the analytics engineer here because in my mind they're kind of tools for the same thing. I know they're probably not in reality, but in my mind they are. Um, and so they're not really talking to many people on the management side. They are kind of stuck in on, I wouldn't say silo, but they're on their own little world on the database side. And then the analytics engineer is a meld between the two. They're interfacing with the data teams, talking to data engineers, helping them design their pipelines, but also talking to data analysts and stakeholders because they need to figure out, hey, what are the requirements that we actually need that I need to translate to then tell the data engineers. So if you're interested in working across all sides of the business, the analytics engineer might be a good pick for you. Um, and some kind of other considerations just in terms of skill development and where you might go after these. Um, Data analysts, it's obviously a lot of times they'll go into more analytics engineers or more advanced data analyst roles, which is just kind of data scientists, where they're going into things like ML, maybe becoming an ML engineer, and just growing in the realm of getting better analysis, getting better predictions, getting better reporting or insights. Data engineers might involve into someone like a data architect or a cloud architect, where they're not only just focusing on data but actually designing whole entire systems. Maybe the backends for applications. And then analytics engineers can kind of are in a hybrid position. They can go into more of the architecture roles. They could go into kind of more down the ML engineering side of things, especially now, where I'll see a lot of analytics engineers I think are going to start to go because it's just kind of a natural extension of if you want to get the best insights, now you have to kind of incorporate some of those techniques of AI and ML, as buzzwordy as they are. And so my final comparison that I want to make, and just kind of bringing us all the way back to where we started with our original graphic, I wanted to talk about which one's for you, right? Now we've gotten all this information. How can you make an informed decision on which one to pursue if you're interested in doing that? And I would say, kind of I'll break it down by each category and which role I think or which person is best suited to that role. You can decide which person you fit into. So for a data analyst, I'd say that's best for someone that really enjoys, diving deep into data, changing data around to figure out, hey, how can I manipulate this to find a cool little insight or a correlation, and really getting in the minutia of tweaking data around and understanding, hey, how can I extract data or information out of this that isn't only, doesn't only predict something, but is also relevant and reliable. If you're just generating correlations but not causations, that can be an issue for your business. And so this is great for people that are interested in a little bit the data side, but don't want to get super technical. They want to stay plugged into business operations, but they want to kind of use their statistical background to do so. A data engineer is probably more ideal for people that have a very strong technical background that enjoy just kind of getting in the weeds and building things in isolation, maintaining a robust data infrastructure, really optimizing and figuring out the best way to do things, and that are just want to leverage a deep knowledge of databases, programming, cloud platforms to put together the best, most efficient data pipelines possible. And so you're not typically too plugged into the business, so it's more for people that are really just interested in staying, on the technical side of things. And so the analytics engineer, I think, is really a meld between the two. If you're in between, you don't fall into those buckets of wanting to be super technical or wanting to just use your technical skills to help help the business. An analytics engineer is great because they have that technical expertise. They're able to bring some of these best practices from the data engineering side into the data analyst world to generate better data for analysis, and they're able to interface with both sides of the business. They're talking to their stakeholders, getting reporting requirements, then translating them to data engineers to actually be able to generate the data for those. So it's really a mix. Where do you fall in those three buckets? I would say is what the one you should choose. And yeah, I hope I've given you enough information to kind of make an informed decision here. But the best career path, I'd say, would always depend on your interests and strengths. So pick the one that is right for you, not one that you think is really good for you. If you're technically inclined, enjoy building systems, data engineering is probably a good option. If you love diving into data but extracting data insights for the business, consider data analysis. And if you're somewhere in between, analytics engineering is probably your sweet spot. But wherever you choose, the wide world of data offers a plethora of opportunities for growth and innovation. And that's what the data guy is all about here, is growth and innovation. So I hope you learned something today in today's video. And if you have, please like and subscribe. But above all else, have a good one. Data guy out. Peace.